Karoline Leavitt, a 27-year-old woman, is not only the White House press secretary, but also a model of decisiveness and perseverance in her work. When we look at her, we don't just see a young woman standing in one of the most powerful positions in American politics, but also a figure facing a major personal challenge, a defamation lawsuit that could change everything. But for Karoline, this is not the first time she's had to confront such stress. The story begins on a morning when the early sunlight filters through the window of Karoline's small apartment in Washington, D.C., where she starts her day with heavy thoughts about the lawsuit she is about to face. Karoline is not someone who is easily defeated. She wakes up every day not just to meet job demands, but to prove herself in a world full of challenges and judgment. She is a part of the government, representing the White House, but at the same time, she is also someone fighting for justice in an increasingly polarized society. The determination in her eyes, the way she prepares every detail of her tailored business suit, all indicate that this is not just an ordinary day, but a defining moment in her life. The lawsuit Karoline faces is not a simple one. Whoopi Goldberg, a famous star, has filed a defamation lawsuit against her, demanding up to $10 million in damages. What Whoopi views as an attack is not just a routine remark in a press conference, but something spoken by a person with significant influence like Karoline. She is a spokesperson for the White House, and what she says is not only personal, but also reflects the policies of an administration. However, this leads to a bigger issue. Can public statements made by an official be considered defamatory, even when made in the context of their work? What is unfolding in the courtroom is not just a battle between two individuals. It reflects a broader issue in American society, how freedom of speech and the justice system can be affected by external factors, particularly political views. Karoline is not just defending herself, but she is also fighting for a principle, the right to free speech, a right that she and millions of Americans are protected by the Constitution. Karoline's decision to stand up for herself is not because she wants a personal victory, but because she believes in the right to free speech and fairness in the judicial system. What she said in the press conference was not a personal attack on Whoopi Goldberg, but simply a public opinion on a government policy. However, Whoopi saw it as a personal attack on her show, The View. And this is why the lawsuit has become more complicated, because it is not just a legal case, but also involves deep societal values. When Karoline enters the courtroom, she knows that this is not just a battle between her and Whoopi, but a battle between societal values, between freedom of speech and the right to be protected from defamation, between politicians and celebrities. The justice system will decide not only who is right or wrong in this lawsuit, but also serve as a measure of fairness in society. This court, with figures like Judge Grayson, known for his left-leaning views, will question whether justice will be served fairly when external factors, like politics and bias, influence decisions. Every day in Karoline's life is a big challenge. She not only faces complex issues at work, but also has to contend with unpredictable challenges. Especially when facing this lawsuit, she must also fight against systemic issues in society. Karoline knows that it is not only Whoopi Goldberg and her legal team who will be opponents. One of her biggest challenges is the possible bias in the courtroom. Judge Edward Grayson, appointed as the judge in this case, is famous for decisions that tend to lean toward progressive views. This makes Karoline feel that she is not just fighting an individual, but also a system that might not be entirely fair. However, Karoline is not afraid. She learned during her time as a law student at Yale that only resilience and a sharp mind can win battles like this. She knows that if she wants to change the system, she must start with herself. And even if the system is not fair, she will fight to make a difference. The lawsuit between Karoline Leavitt and Whoopi Goldberg is not just a simple legal debate between two individuals. It is a confrontation between two different worldviews, representing two social classes in today's American society. One side is a representative of the government and conservative views, while the other represents the entertainment culture and progressive values. The polarization in American society is reflected in this lawsuit, and it is these social conflicts that have created a tense atmosphere, not only in the courtroom, but also everywhere around it. Whoopi Goldberg is a major name in the entertainment industry, with a career spanning decades and a powerful influence in the media. She is the host of The View, a popular TV show that discusses social, political, and cultural issues. Whoopi is not only a famous star, but also a symbol of free speech and progressive views in American society. On the other hand, Karoline Leavitt, though not an entertainment star, is one of the influential figures in American politics. As the White House press secretary, Karoline's job is to speak on behalf of and defend the government's policies. The difference between these two women lies not only in their careers, but also in the deep beliefs they represent. Whoopi is the voice for freedom and progress, while Karoline represents conservative values in the current administration's policies. This lawsuit is not just about Karoline's statement in a press conference, but also a symbol of the conflict in American society between different political and cultural groups. The trial begins with clear tension. Karoline walks into the courtroom, the sound of her high heels echoing in the quiet space. Each step she takes is filled with determination. While Whoopi and her legal team sit in their seats, carefully watching every move Karoline makes, the atmosphere in the room becomes heavy. Journalists gather around, waiting for every detail of the case, and supporters from both sides are tense, ready to accept the outcome. Judge Edward Grayson, who will preside over this case, is a judge known for his progressive views. Throughout his career, he has made decisions that often lean toward left-wing perspectives and has frequently been criticized for a lack of fairness toward conservative viewpoints. Karoline is well aware of this and understands that facing Grayson in such a lawsuit will not be easy, but she does not let this bias deter her. She knows that this lawsuit is not just about herself, but also about free speech, fairness, and the integrity of the justice system. Entering the courtroom, Karoline has prepared herself to face not just Whoopi, but also the potential unfairness of the court. Judge Grayson cannot hide his sarcasm as he looks at her. "We are here to hear Whoopi Goldberg's lawsuit. Leavitt, do you have anything to say?" His voice is cold, clearly unfriendly. Karoline can feel the eyes of the journalists focused on her, waiting to see if she can overcome the injustice from a judge she knows will not stand by her side. However, Karoline is not afraid. She has prepared meticulously for today. Before stepping into the courtroom, she had reviewed the legal documents multiple times, looking for precedents she could use to defend herself. As Whoopi's lawyer begins presenting, Karoline knows she will have to face a very strong argument. Whoopi's team is not only trying to prove that Karoline's statement was defamatory, but also attempting to damage her reputation as a woman representing the White House. They present evidence of negative public reactions, critical articles about Whoopi on social media, and a series of tweets from the View viewers, all directly linked to Karoline's statement in the press conference. This does not make Karoline step back. She knows that the American justice system protects the right to free speech, especially for public officials when speaking about political issues. "My statement was not an attack on Whoopi Goldberg or The View. I was merely commenting on a public issue about funding television programs with extremist content," Karoline asserts. She continues to clarify that her words were not malicious, not aimed at Whoopi personally, but were a viewpoint on the government's funding policy. But Grayson does not let Karoline present easily. He continuously interrupts her, mocking her, calling her a young girl playing legal games. His lack of respect intensifies the atmosphere in the courtroom. Despite this, Karoline remains unshaken. She has prepared a legal brief, including famous legal precedents like New York Times v. Sullivan, and understands that if she wants to win the case, she must not only defend herself but also fight for the principle of justice. Once Grayson interrupts and refuses to allow her to present evidence, Karoline decides to take a bold step. She has prepared recordings from the press conference proving that her statement was not a personal attack, but merely a public opinion. She requests permission to present these recordings in court. Karoline knows that this lawsuit is not just a personal battle between her and Whoopi. It is a battle about the fundamental principles of free speech, justice, and fairness in the justice system. Karoline does not just want to win this case. She wants it to become a small revolution in defending free speech in society. She understands that if she does not speak up and demand her rights, the consequences of this lawsuit could affect millions of others in the future. She demands that Judge Grayson resign for bias and call for fairness. This move shocks the entire courtroom. It is a bold and strategic action. Karoline knows that this will not only change the course of the lawsuit, but could also be the first step in changing the justice system, making it fairer and protecting the rights of all citizens. After Judge Grayson ordered the trial to begin, Karoline Leavitt, despite feeling the tension in the courtroom, maintained her composure. She knew that what she did today would not only affect herself, but could also change the direction of the government and have a profound impact on American society. As Whoopi's lawyer, Daniel Hirsch, began presenting evidence to prove that Karoline had harmed Whoopi's reputation and the reputation of The View, Karoline knew that she was facing an intense legal battle. Whoopi is a famous star with a powerful influence in the media, so this lawsuit had become a symbol of the confrontation between politics and entertainment. Hirsch's arguments targeted the claim that Karoline's statement in the press conference had caused a significant public backlash, with a series of tweets and articles from The View viewers criticizing Whoopi and even calling her an ally of extremists. Hirsch relentlessly pushed this argument, presenting evidence of tweets, articles critical of Whoopi, and even some advertising contracts that were canceled after Karoline's statement hit the media. All of these factors were linked together to demonstrate that Karoline's actions not only caused emotional harm, but also resulted in financial consequences for Whoopi. Facing this attack, Karoline remained composed. She knew that she was not just in a legal battle, but also in an ideological fight. That's why she was determined not only to protect herself, but also to defend the principles of free speech and the right to defend the truth. Karoline was under no illusion about the challenges she was about to face. She knew that in this high-pressure and complex environment, she needed to be thoroughly prepared. Not only did she need solid legal evidence, but she also had to rely on her deep understanding of the legal system and important legal precedents. She began by emphasizing that her statement in the press conference was not a personal attack on Whoopi or The View. It was simply an opinion on the issue of funding television programs that the White House deemed to have extremist content. She cited famous lawsuits, such as New York Times versus Sullivan, to assert that a defamation lawsuit can only succeed if there is clear evidence of malice. That is, an intentional attempt to harm someone. My statement was not an attack on anyone. It was just a public opinion about policy. This is entirely within my right to free speech, Karoline explained while facing Grayson, who had interrupted her and mocked her confidence. One key point that Karoline sought to clarify was the difference between public reaction and personal malice. Although there had been a series of negative public reactions following her statement, that did not mean she had acted with the intent to harm anyone. Karoline had prepared a thick file of public reactions and information from the press conference to prove that she had no ill intent towards Whoopi. However, Grayson continued to show impatience. He repeatedly interrupted Karoline and mocked her as she tried to present evidence. Grayson said, "You're not a lawyer, you're just a young girl trying to play legal games in a courtroom." Although this lack of respect might have made others falter, Karoline did not let the judge's sarcasm affect her. She persisted in defending her position, even when fined $1,000 for contempt of court. The contempt and unfair attitude from Grayson only made Karoline more determined. Not stopping there, she decided to take a new strategy, a powerful counterattack against the bias she felt from the judge. Karoline requested to present the recordings from her press conference to prove that she had no personal malice. Although Grayson vehemently opposed and refused to allow the recordings, Karoline did not give up. An even bolder move was when Karoline demanded that Grayson resign for his obvious bias throughout the trial. This left everyone in the courtroom stunned. It was not just a simple request, it was a strong statement about the injustice in the legal system. As Grayson continued to deny Karoline the opportunity to present evidence, she used this tactic to create a significant shift in the direction of the trial. She understood that if she did not stand up against the bias, the justice system would never change. Throughout the trial, one of the things Karoline had to face was the bias not only from Judge Grayson, but also from the broader justice system. Although she knew that fighting against this bias would not be easy, she decided not to remain silent. By documenting Grayson's actions and words throughout the trial, Karoline not only defended herself, but also exposed the bias existing in the court. She made a bold demand for Grayson's resignation and presented evidence of his biased behavior. This made everyone in the courtroom take notice and sparked discussions about fairness in the justice system. Karoline's strong resistance was a clear message that, in any system, justice can only be served when everyone has the same rights and equal opportunity before the law. Although the lawsuit had not yet concluded, Karoline had created a significant ripple in the courtroom. Not only had she fended off the allegations from Whoopi and her legal team, but Karoline had raised a larger issue. How can the justice system be fair and free from external factors, such as bias and prejudice? When the trial ended, Karoline not only won the case but also earned the respect of both the public and the legal community. Her perseverance had made those around her reconsider how they viewed justice and fairness in the legal system. Although this was a personal victory, it had opened the door for important changes in how lawsuits like this would be handled in the future. After days of facing tension in the courtroom, Karoline could clearly feel the shift in the atmosphere as she stood before the court. The exhaustion and anxiety were becoming more evident, but she refused to let them undermine her resolve. Throughout the trial, she faced numerous challenges from Whoopi's legal team, as well as the unjust attitude from Judge Grayson. She knew that beyond defending herself, she was fighting for a greater principle: fairness within the justice system. The courtroom, which should have been a symbol of justice, seemed to have become a place of bias. Karoline realized that not all judges were as neutral as they claimed to be. Judge Grayson, someone she had once thought would make a fair ruling, displayed clear bias. His constant interruptions of Karoline and mockery in front of the public made her realize that if she did not act now, the justice system would never deliver justice properly. But Karoline did not allow this bias to make her step back. She had meticulously prepared every detail, every piece of evidence, and argument to expose the clear bias that Grayson was showing. She was not only standing up to protect herself, but also for her belief in justice, that the legal system must be a place where everyone, regardless of fame or power, is treated fairly. Karoline realized that in order to change the course of the trial, she could not simply rely on defending herself against Whoopi's allegations. She needed to address a deeper issue: the issue of judicial bias in the justice system. Judge Grayson, with his biased actions and words, could not represent justice. Therefore, Karoline decided to expose his bias and demand an immediate change. In the middle of the trial, after Grayson repeatedly interrupted her and showed disrespect, Karoline stood up, her head held high with determination, and said, "Your Honor, I demand that Judge Grayson resign immediately for his clear acts of bias. If we do not change the judicial system now, how can we claim that justice is being administered fairly?" This was a bold move, not only to protect Karoline, but also as a small revolution in the courtroom. Karoline was not just fighting for herself, but for those who could not speak up, for those who were suffering injustice within the legal system. This was the most important moment in the entire process, a turning point that could completely change the direction of the case. Although Grayson immediately rejected this demand, Karoline was not afraid. She had prepared for this situation beforehand. She pulled out a notebook and began presenting examples of Grayson's biased behavior throughout the trial. Every word he spoke, every action in the courtroom had been documented by Karoline, and now she was using this evidence to prove that Judge Grayson could not continue holding his position. Karoline's assertiveness in demanding Grayson's resignation was not only a strong personal action, but also a powerful statement about the necessity to reform the judicial system. This move quickly caught the attention of the public and the media. Reporters began covering the story, and the tension in the courtroom grew. While many in the courtroom could not believe that Karoline dared to stand up to a judge as powerful as Grayson, many others admired her courage and determination. Throughout the trial, reporters began questioning the bias in the American justice system. Karoline had cleverly sparked a broader debate about fairness and transparency in the appointment of judges. This was not a new issue, but it had never been brought up as clearly and forcefully as it was now. It was precisely from Karoline's action that those in the legal community began to rethink whether it was necessary to reform the way judges were appointed and the decisions they made in important cases. Could bias exist openly in trials without having a significant impact on justice? As the trial continued, Grayson, although maintaining a cold demeanor, was clearly facing significant pressure from the evidence Karoline presented. Under public criticism and Karoline's call for judicial reform, Grayson gradually realized that he could not continue his role as a judge in this case. Finally, Grayson decided to step down from the case. This decision was not just due to the pressure from Karoline, but also because of public opinion and the strong backlash from the public. Grayson's resignation opened a new opportunity for Karoline in the justice system. The newly appointed judge to replace Grayson was Margaret Ellis, a judge known for her fairness and neutrality. Ellis not only listened to all the arguments, but also ensured that all parties were given a fair opportunity in the trial. When the new judge took over the case, the situation changed dramatically. Karoline, with her strong legal evidence, continued to defend her position. She not only proved that she had no ill intent toward Whoopi, but also clarified that her statement was a public opinion about policy and not a personal attack. Judge Ellis, the newly appointed judge, acknowledged Karoline's arguments and ruled that there was insufficient evidence to prove malice on her part. She won the case, but her victory was not just for herself. It was a victory for justice, for transparency in the justice system, and for the right to free speech. The change Karoline initiated did not just resolve this lawsuit, but also sparked a small revolution in how the legal system handles sensitive issues related to power and freedom. Although her victory in this lawsuit earned Karoline respect from the public and the legal community, she did not stop there. After her victory, she continued to call for judicial reforms, particularly in training judges on issues of bias and political views. Karoline became a pioneer in pushing for reforms in the justice system, a reform she believed would lead to a fairer system where everyone, regardless of status or fame, could be treated fairly under the law. After Judge Margaret Ellis announced the ruling, Karoline felt an overwhelming sense of relief. The long days of tension and exhaustion in the courtroom had finally come to an end. She had won, not just legally, but also a victory for the values she represented. Those present in the courtroom immediately saw a clear shift in how the case was handled, from a trial filled with bias to one that was fair and transparent. This not only helped Karoline defend herself, but also sent a powerful message about justice in society. However, this victory was not merely a legal result. It was a triumph for justice, for free speech, and for the values Karoline had fought for throughout the trial. After the ruling was read, those in the courtroom not only praised Karoline's legal abilities, but also saw her as a symbol of resilience, someone who was unafraid to stand up against the injustices in the system. The reporters covering the case continuously referred to Karoline as a legal hero and a warrior for justice. Not only in the legal community, but across the media and public, she had become a role model, a living testament to the power of perseverance and faith in justice. As news of the lawsuit began to spread, the public's reaction was unexpected. While some supported Karoline for her resilience and her fight for justice, others criticized her, claiming that her actions were an attempt to boost her own image and attract attention. However, despite the mixed reactions, the important thing was that the lawsuit sparked a major discussion about fairness within the U.S. justice system, particularly in cases involving celebrities and sensitive political issues. One of the largest opposing groups to Karoline was those defending free speech, who argued that this lawsuit should not have existed. They claimed that Whoopi Goldberg's lawsuit against Karoline was an attempt to restrict the free speech rights of public officials and the media, especially when these statements were made in the context of their work. These people viewed Karoline as a representative of a generation willing to stand up for freedom of speech and would not let anyone weaken this right. Meanwhile, conservatives saw Karoline as someone fighting for the values of the government and conservative political views in America. To them, Karoline's victory was not just a legal battle, but also a win for the administration's policies and for the interests of those working in the political system. After the victory in the lawsuit, Karoline did not stop but continued to push for reform in the justice system. She began participating in discussions and organizations where she could speak on issues that she believed needed improvement in the legal system. Karoline realized that although her victory was important, reforming the justice system was a long-term effort that required deeper changes. Karoline began advocating for the establishment of an independent oversight system for judges, to ensure they were not influenced by political or personal biases in their decisions. She believed judges needed training on issues such as bias within the justice system and that there should be regular evaluations of their fairness. She also called for greater transparency in the appointment of judges, arguing that judges should be held accountable for their decisions. Through this, Karoline hoped to create a justice system that was not only fair, but also more transparent and trustworthy for all citizens. She understood that these changes would not happen overnight, but she was determined to start with small steps, knowing that only through changes in mindset and actions from judges could the justice system progress. After the trial concluded, Karoline addressed the media and the public. Justice is not just the victory of one individual, but the victory of all of us. We must ensure that in a fair society, no one, whether a celebrity or a public official, is treated unjustly in the justice system. That is why I call for reform of the justice system, not just to protect the interests of one person, but to protect the rights of all citizens. Karoline's call for reform not only shocked the legal community, but also gained widespread support from social organizations, free speech groups, and ordinary people who wanted to see change in the justice system. Major social organizations began campaigning with her, organizing forums and conferences on judicial reform. Debates broke out in the community about how judges could behave more fairly and neutrally in political lawsuits. The success in the lawsuit and the judicial reform sparked a new path for Karoline. Not only was she a strong woman standing up for justice, but she also became a leader in discussions about political and legal reforms in America. She realized that to truly change the system, she could not just stop at fighting in the courtroom. She needed to participate in politics and advocate for reforms at higher levels. Karoline began engaging in political campaigns, discussing key issues such as government transparency, free speech, and legal reform. With growing respect from the public, she became a powerful voice in policy and justice discussions. Her career continued to thrive, and the values she represented were increasingly recognized by many. Karoline understood that her battle did not end when the lawsuit was resolved. Bigger battles still lay ahead, and she was ready to continue fighting for justice and the rights of all people in society. After Karoline won the lawsuit, she did not stop. Although she had successfully defended her freedom of speech and the judicial system had changed thanks to her efforts, Karoline still felt that a new chapter in her life had just begun. It was not only the legal battle, but also the development of a larger movement. A movement fighting for justice, for fairness in a judicial system that she knew could not change through just one lawsuit. She stood at the threshold of a new career, not just as a legal warrior, but also as a leader in judicial reform. In her view, this was not just a personal victory, but a victory for a greater ideal. An ideal about how one person can change the system, expand opportunities for those without a voice, and bring changes not only to the legal community, but also to the way society views power and freedom. Karoline's story was not just the story of a lawsuit. It was the story of a revolution in justice and fairness. And although there were victories, she knew that no victory was complete unless it changed the very foundation of the system. Therefore, Karoline began her next journey, not just to fight for the bigger issues, but also for the future of those who would enter this judicial system, hoping they would not have to face the bias or unfairness that she had endured. Karoline's lawsuit had a significant impact on both the legal community and society. After Judge Grayson resigned and Judge Margaret Ellis took over, the system saw clear changes in how judges handled cases. The decisions of the judges became more transparent and fairer, and there was an increase in training judges to recognize bias in cases. Not only in the legal community but in society, Karoline had become a role model. She was not just a winner of a lawsuit, but also an inspiration to those struggling within the system. Social organizations and civil rights groups began recognizing Karoline's contributions to changing the way the judicial system operated. She was invited to participate in seminars, panel discussions, and talks on legal reform. Karoline did not stop at changing one trial or winning one case. She continued to question systemic issues, how cases were handled in the political and social environment. She called for a comprehensive change in the justice system, especially in reviewing decisions made by judges and appointing them to important positions within the courts. To truly achieve fairness, Karoline believed the system had to be reformed from the inside out, from selecting judges to how cases were tried. As a pioneer in judicial reform, Karoline continued to lead discussions on reforms in the legal system. However, not everyone agreed with her views. Those in the traditional legal community still held firm to their belief that the system had been functioning well and that reform would create difficulties and undermine trust in the courts. But Karoline was undeterred. She knew that these reforms would not come easily and would face strong opposition from conservative groups. She understood that significant changes would touch the interests of many, and those people would not easily give up their power. However, with strong belief and compelling evidence, Karoline continued to fight. She did not just want to change the system, she wanted to bring transparency and fairness to everyone in society. She began building relationships with social groups, nonprofit organizations, and like-minded individuals. She organized workshops where legal experts and lawmakers could discuss issues within the judicial system. She also began exploring new ways to reform the system, including using technology to monitor judges and create independent reviews of their decisions. With growing respect from the community and social organizations, Karoline not only became a legal activist, but also gained influence in politics. After her victory in the lawsuit, she decided to enter politics to push for the reforms she had been advocating for. She started working with lawmakers to draft new laws on judicial reform and policies protecting freedom of speech. Karoline's story was not only about winning a case in court, but also about creating a major change in how government agencies operate. She not only wanted to change the legal system, but also to restructure how the government handles important issues related to free speech and basic civil rights. With the support of the public, Karoline began building a new political movement, one that demanded justice and transparency in all areas of government. Looking back on her journey, Karoline did not only see a personal victory, but also a significant step for reform in an outdated and unjust system. She had done what many thought was impossible, not only winning the lawsuit, but also raising major issues about fairness in the judicial system. This opened up a new path for those who wanted to fight for rights and justice in society. Although she had achieved much success, Karoline knew that the battle was not over. The reforms she was fighting for were never going to be easy, and many challenges lay ahead. However, she was ready to continue down this path, knowing that she was not alone. Her journey had sparked a wave of change, and that was the most important thing she could achieve. With resilience and faith in justice, Karoline continued to work tirelessly to promote reforms, fight for fairness, and bring hope to those who felt wronged in society. The road ahead was long, but Karoline was ready to continue her journey, confident that one day the judicial system and society would truly become fairer and more transparent.